Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, and in today's video we are diving into my 2020 favorites. Now this year has been an interesting reading year. I have to say that I read quite some good books. I didn't read as much as I wanted, but the books I read were good reads, and as I mentioned in my previous video, I have failed on the Goodreads reading challenge. However, hear me out. I was supposed to read 50 books and I read 37, so not that bad. It's still really good. It's actually really good. Little victories, but yeah, some of them are really good and I want to share with you. So we are going to have different little piles. So I have non-fiction, fiction, poetry, and one graphic novel. Most of these are 5 stars, but I have some honorable mentions of 4 stars. And by the way, in 2020 I only rate my books so that I can make this specific video like which ones I loved so much, and usually I only rate them when I love them and I know that they're 5 stars. But if I read them and I know they're not 5 stars, then I don't know what they are. Anyways, without any further ado, let's jump right into the books, and starting with the first pile of fiction. So the first book in the fiction category is Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. Now I have a full-on review on this one, which I will link somewhere here, and you can go and read it. But basically this is set during the pandemic, and I read it during the peak of COVID back in May. And yeah, it's a pandemic that completely destroys humanity, and only few humans are left, and we are following them few years after the apocalypse, and they are all part of this moving symphony, which is, they call themselves Shakespeare Moving Symphony, and they travel between different human colonies left on Earth and perform Shakespearean plays. And it's such a beautiful exploration of art, survival, and life, and I would highly recommend this one. It was an amazing read. You have to read it. Next is a magical realism book, and it's actually very interesting because it's a Mexican classic. I've heard so much about it and I finally got the chance to pick it up this year, and that is Like Water for Chocolate by Laura Esquivel. This is such a beautiful tale set up in the Mexican ranch in the 60s, and it's an exploration of identity, culture, purpose, and we follow our main character, who is such a great cook, but when she cooks she also has magical abilities, and whatever emotions she feels, she kind of translates those into her cooking, and then when the people eat that food they get influenced by whatever emotions she was feeling. And she is the younger of her sisters, and she's supposed to stay with her mom until the day she dies, supposed to go and, you know, go on adventures or endeavors or any of that. But as the books progresses, we kind of see her coming out of all of this and starting to fully impose herself as a full person with hopes, with dreams of her own. It was written in the 60s and set in the 60s, so it's important to keep this idea in mind. It's also a beautiful feminist tale, but also just a tale of identity and being you and going after what you want, even if that means breaking customs and traditions. And it was such an amazing immersion into Mexican culture and food. They are like, at the beginning of every chapter there is an actual recipe for a Mexican food for every month, and it's just amazing. It was such a nice little travel and a feast, and I would highly recommend this. Next is a fantasy, a middle grade fantasy. By the way, these are in no particular order, and that is Nevermore, The Trial of Morgan Crow by Jessica Townsend. I mentioned this one in my recommendations for lockdown, or books to read during the lockdown, so if you want to know more about that I will link the video also here. But basically we follow Morgan Crow, who was born in a cursed day, and basically she's supposed to die on her 11th birthday. However, on her 11th birthday there's this really quirky guy that comes and just takes her away to this far foreign land where cats are talking and are giants, people are flying, and she takes part into these trials to join this society, and it's so full of magic and beautiful, you know, picturing and adventures, and you can just sit and curl up with it for a few hours and you're completely transported somewhere else. And it was a very much of an enjoyable read, and I will recommend this one. Next is The Testaments by Margaret Atwood, which is the sequel to the very famous The Handmaid's Tale by her as well. And in this book we follow the fall of the Gilead Society, which was basically this utopian society described and told in the first book. I have a full-on review on this one that will also leave here. I really love this book. It was so good. It's Margaret Atwood's writing that does it for me mostly. She has such an amazing writing, and it just makes you feel so scrutinized. Is that the word? Scrutinized. Non-native problems here. Anyways, it makes you feel watched, and you feel, you know, get all these goosebumps, and you start realizing that maybe we're not that far fetched of these kind of societies anyways. So yeah, this one I will leave the review so that you can go and watch it. Next one is The Nightingale by Christina Hanna. This book was one of the first ones I read last year, and it completely wrenched my heart. I cried so much. It's pretty much known in the book community online that it's a kind of a tear wrecker. It's set in during World War II, and we follow these two sisters from France as they have very different paths during the war. One follows the path of resistance, and she gets involved in all of these resistance activities and eventually gets caught. The other one is more of a very much kind of, how would you say that, like laying low profile, just following the rules, doing whatever it takes because her husband is a soldier and he left and she just won. Okay guys, so I realized that I wasn't filming and it cut, so I have to repeat a lot of stuff. So I was saying that even though both of these sisters chose a very different paths in the war, they both did have a major role, and the other one that didn't choose resistance chose sacrifice for the sake of her family, of her loved ones. There's a lot of, you know, family love, sacrifice. It's mostly a beautiful tale about sacrifice for things we believe in, for our values, for things we stand for, and for what is right. And yeah, I cried a lot at the end, and I think you should read this one. Next is Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine. This one is about Eleanor, who's a very alienated person, very quirky, lives on her own bubble, doesn't have a lot of friends, doesn't have any friend at all, but she had such a traumatic childhood and a very toxic relationship with her mom, until the day she meets this person at work, and from that point on her life starts changing. And this is basically an ode to kindness and empathy and compassion, and how, you know, listening to someone's story, being willing to, you know, listen to them no matter how strange or different they might be, could be a life changer, not only for their lives but also for your life, but mostly for their lives. And it's such a little twinkly star, this book. I really enjoyed it a lot. Yeah. Next on the list is A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness, which is about a little boy whose mom is battling cancer, whose dad left them and is not very present in his life, and who's also victim of bullying. And every night he's visited by this tree, this talking tree, and this tree tells him stories and tales, and these tales are supposed to equip him with what he needs to survive everything going on in his life and, you know, face those adversities. And it's a beautiful lesson of letting go, accepting, and just standing up for yourself. There's also a lot of compassion and kindness, and I definitely did shed a tear or two at the end, because this little boy is such a young, fragile human being that has to deal with a lot. It was a beautiful tale. It's also pretty short, so you can read this one pretty fast. Next one, oh my god, is a book that made me laugh so much. An interesting transition, made me cry, made me laugh. This one I read back in April I was in a very, very bad place. Let's just not go there ever again. And I read this one and I remember laughing out loud so many times. I keep saying that this one reads like watching a movie. All books do, but this one in particular, because we follow this Chloe, it's just the main character who's having this existential life crisis. She just got off a really weird relationship. She doesn't have a place to stay, she doesn't have a job, she's completely lost, but she's so real and down to earth and relatable and so funny, and you love following her and you root for her, and it just gives you a good laugh, and we all need that, don't we? Right? You're welcome. The next book is actually an honorable mention because it wasn't a 5-star, it was like a 4.5, but you know what, let's just say it's a 5-star. Let's just not dive into all this metrics and quantitative stuff. This is The Immortalist by Chloe Benjamin, and this one follows the life of these 5 siblings who go to see this medium person in New York back in the summer of '69. I got my first real 6-string. Boy, I could firing gun. You know the song? It's one of my favorites. Anyway, I'm not gonna ever sing again on this channel. But this book, yeah, so they go there. The book, focus. They go there and she tells them when they will die. And from that moment, we follow their different perspective and the different lives, knowing when they will die and what kind of decisions they make with this information. Some of them believe it, some not, but overall it's an exploration of destiny, faith, purpose of life, how knowing that you would die you know, make you change things in your life or make you live differently maybe. And the characters were not, you know, you don't really get attached to the characters, and I think that's done on purpose because, hear me out, since we know that they are going to die and there is this looming death from the beginning, the author made the reader kind of feel this detachment because these characters are all ephemeral. But the point is, aren't we all? Aren't we all? On that thought, we move to the non-fiction. Okay, so for the non-fictions, the first book I want to mention is First Comes Marriage, My Not So Typical American Love Story by Huda Marashi. This one, I remember reading it and loving it. We follow Huda, who's an American, first generation American born to Iraqi immigrant parents, and she shares with us her expectations for a love story and how they clashed with the culture, the religion, and basically she tells the story of her marriage with her current husband and how everything went and how she did kind of try to find a balance between her American expectations for great romance but also her Arab Muslim reality of life. And yeah, it just, what came out of it is such a nice honest memoir and tale that make you think about identity and values and all of that. And there's a lot of also family-oriented tale in here. Is a lot of family. She's very close to her family. It's your typical Arab family, and I love this book. It's not that popular, but I loved it, and I would really recommend this one. Next is Beginner's Plaque, Build Your Life on Purpose and Impact, and we follow the journey of a social entrepreneur who starts this enterprise in Uganda with a couple of women there. And even though the author is white and American, I love how she tells this story from a non-white centric point of view, where, you know, it's always the Westerners going to Europe to create this, you know, enterprises or businesses or saving the people, but actually no, she works together with these women and they are at the central stage, and we can really see this on her tone and on the way she talks about that, and it's truly inspirational. She's also speaking a lot about finding your purpose with everything that we see nowadays, this pressure of having a purpose, working toward it, blah blah, having something so great and grand. And she always just say that this book is for the average person, and she just talked to you about how an average person can also do something maybe not so great, but something good. And I love that because it's a down-to-earth kind of book and not these books that keep telling you that you have to do something amazing or make 1 million before you're 30 or whatever. Next is A Year in Provence by Peter Mayel, in which we follow the author's year in Provence. Basically, he is from England and he decided to retire with his wife there, so they buy this house in Provence and they move there, and we follow a year in their life. And this book is full of food, landscape, meeting the provincial French people, laughing, like storytelling. It's just like if you were there. If you sit and curl up with this one, you're immediately taken to Provence, and this is one thing I really loved about this. Another one for non-fiction is Educated by Tara Westover. This is about her, it's a memoir about her growing up in a super conservative Mormon household and then getting out of this to pursue an education, and ended up getting a terminal degree. And basically once she's out, she could see all the toxicity and everything that they were led to believe, because her family was extreme with this. So they never went to school, they couldn't go to the hospital, they couldn't basically talk to other people that are not part of the community. They believed in the end of days, and her father had mental issues, and he never realized that because he was so engulfed in his bubble of his own beliefs. But after we realized that he had mental illness, one of her siblings was extremely abusive toward her. This is a book about the power of education, and this means a lot to me, and it would mean a lot to me if a lot of you guys out there pick this one up. Okay, we're almost done. We just have 2 poetry books. The poetry books are both by Langleave, and it's Love and Misadventures and Lullabies, and these are beautiful poetry collections. Now I know that poetry has been evolving differently, but these are told in such a classic way of telling poetry. So if you're a lover with beautiful playing with words, beautiful shaping of like the words, I would highly recommend these ones. I've read them both during the summer by the lake, and I loved every single piece, and I remember just going and underlining everything with my pencil, because truly they are beautifully written. It just felt that you were reading a classical poetry, the classical way of seeing it, like a more of a romantic movement of literature, but at the same time with the modern. The last book is a graphic novel, and that is Quiet Girl in a Noisy World, an introvert story. I am introvert, so in the 16 personality I am ENFP. So I'm an introvert, even though I also think I'm a little bit of an extrovert sometimes, or when I am in my extrovert mode I can get very extroverted, but overall I'm an introvert. And this book is just a super sweet little illustration of a life of an introvert. So if you have an introvert in your life and you want to get a little bit more inside their head and their thoughts and their life, you can read this one. If you're an introvert yourself, you'll definitely feel at home reading this. And if you're not, then this is a good place to start to see how we view things and what we do when we tell you that we go into bed, or that we have plans, that we can't come out, you know, these kind of things. So yeah, this one hits home definitely. Yeah, I think that's it. Oh my gosh, the books here are a mess. Okay, those were my favorite books of 2020. Please let me know in the comments below what were your favorites for this year. How was your reading year? Are you satisfied? Are you happy? Don't forget to follow me on Instagram to see what I read in real time, and to just follow what I do if you're curious. And yeah, basically that's it. I'm wishing everyone a happy new year, happy holidays if you're celebrating. Hope you're enjoying some time with your family, and I will talk to you guys in my next video. Bye.